Bitcoin going to 1 million? We'll ask this guy, Zach Abraham, Chief Investment Officer, Bulwark Capital, friend of the show, sponsor of the show. Is Bitcoin going to 1 million bazillion?
Oh, I mean, why not? Right? I mean, you bet. I mean, it's everybody's favorite dream machine at the moment, right?
Why?
You know what, man? It's so funny. Like you and I have talked about, there are so many. Look, and you're going to hear, as the price goes higher, you're going to hear more and more arguments of why it should go higher and why it's a no-brainer and why everybody should have it. And with Bitcoin as the one bit of cryptocurrency that I'll hold off and say, maybe it has a role to play. I have never seen so much blatantly fraudulent language and mixed with complete idiocy when it comes to the narration of Bitcoin. So, for instance, we were reading an article today about this guy that's supposedly this documented financial professional making the argument for why Bitcoin is going to take over, not just for the dollar, but for all currency. It's going to become the global currency. And I just laughed so hard when I read that, because I went, here you have a guy that's, Bitcoin or bust, everything's Bitcoin. And his whole thesis is wrong on the face of it because he doesn't understand the global monetary system, right? Meaning, if Bitcoin was the world currency or the world reserve currency, the entire global economy would be in ashes. It'd be in embers. Just and not because there's anything wrong with Bitcoin, because it's deflationary. And when you have this much debt and you have a deflationary currency, you're done. Meaning, right? Like, so, I mean, look, like, and you and I have talked about it before. Like, let's say you borrowed your home mortgage in Bitcoin in 2018. And Bitcoin was trading at what? 5,000, 6,000. So your mortgage was denominated in Bitcoin. The value of the house has gone up 40%. That's great. The problem is Bitcoin is 20x. So now the value of your house has gone up by 40%. That equity helps you. Problem is the amount of money you borrowed is now worth 20 times more than when you originally borrowed it. And that's why you can't have a deflationary asset at the core. And people will go, well, what about gold? Gold used to be the base asset. The supply of gold was increasing and has increased virtually every single year that man has been on the face of the earth.
Yeah.
Right. So meaning it's an inflationary asset too. It just it inflates at a much slower, much more controlled pace than
and you
fiat
can touch
currencies.
it. I'm telling you, the touching it thing is very important to a lot of people.
Well, look, there's something to be said for that. Like, let's look at a situation where I think that one of the biggest Achilles heel or weak spots in our economy here in the U.S., but I also think increasingly, globally speaking, are power grids. Right. So, Bitcoin is your it's your currency of last resort. Right. Well, I can put a pretty nice chunk of my net worth into a suitcase in the back of my car and drive it across borders. If I don't have power or access to the internet, okay, I've got all this Bitcoin. Great. What does it mean? Right. If my government blocks internet access to CoinDesk or trading sites, and people go, well, they can't do that. That's what people used to say about governments confiscating gold too. Right. So I just, every way you look at it, it just, to me, is and like I said, I think that we would be I think that we'd be better off with Bitcoin as opposed to most fiat currencies. And that being said, I think that's exactly why it won't last long term, and it's not going to be this permanent solution. Because if you think the same governments that will print trillions of dollars out of thin air, basically to enrich their buddies and keep a defunct system afloat, if you think they're going to turn over monetary control to a bunch of internet pirates making Bitcoins and other things, like, you're out of your mind. So I just think it's just mania-induced nonsense, and I think it's the ultimate form of the trading sardine versus the investing sardine, and, there you are.
Talking to Zach Abraham, Chief Investment Officer, Bulwark Capital. Consumer confidence up again. How much does that have to do with Trump and people feeling good, like, okay, we're going to get back to some stuff.
It's funny you bring this up. I think that's a lot of what's going on. And it's just funny to see the mainstream narrative are already trying to twist this, right? So they're like, what is it? There's been a big bump in car purchases right after the election, right? Well, you and I know why that is. We're on the streets. We're talking to people. People were holding off financial decisions. They saw Trump get elected. They had a giant exhale of relief, and they're like, let's go buy that new car, right? Well, I see the article out today, and it's people buying cars in preparation for the damage of Trump tariffs. And people are wondering, is it just bluster? But either way, they better buy a car now before it gets more expensive. And you're just sitting there going, guys, that's not what happened, right? People don't go buy a car because they think things might get bad, right? People buy a car because their outlook is better, right? Like, hey, I'm gonna go pay some of the steepest interest rates in the last 40 years because I think things might just be about ready to hit the fan, right?
I know. It's like, I'm going to go out and get $1,000 car payment. So just in case things go to hell, I could get it in 6 months then for $200 a month.
Yeah, no, I mean, hey, look, these are rational business decisions that I think most people make in their personal finance. I mean, So it is the only time in economics I have ever heard it asserted that people were going to spend more because they were concerned about the future. Right. So, no, I mean, look, I think all economic positive signs you're seeing. The other one you saw was a big bump up in the JOLTS number, right? Job openings number.
Yep.
There you go. There's another thing. Businesses are sitting there saying, you have all these things sitting there saying, OK, good. We're about ready to get back down to business. Some rational decisions are going to be made. And
it's fun. Like with that, hey guys, things are going to get bad in the next couple of months. Let's hire a bunch of people.
Yeah. Hey, go max out the credit cards now, right?
Before rates go down and things go good.
Yeah. The only good news about this though, Chad, is that these people are going to, which is, I think, a wonderful thing for you and I think it's a wonderful thing for the entire country, but these people have really punched themselves out, but they're going to finish themselves off too, right? Yeah. They don't get it. They haven't learned anything. And they're going to continue talking the way they're talking until absolutely nobody is left listening to them, which they're basically there already.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Talking Zach Abraham, Chief Investment Officer, Bulwark Capital. Got about a minute or so here. The DOGE folks got together. They were in D.C. today, laying out some of the stuff they're going to do. And one of the big things was, and you and I have talked about this when COVID was going crazy, is how much office space was empty. Well, our federal government, the Department of Energy, had 8 people on average a day in a place that could hold 5,000. Man, they need to do some cuts. My fear, though, is, and I think you'll probably recognize this, is there's so many protections for these unions, so many protections that the bureaucracy to get to the point where you could cut it, I think will exhaust them.
It may or it may not. I'm not familiar enough or intimately familiar enough with the budget process. My belief and my understanding is there's multiple ways that they can, derail, these regulatory bodies. They can starve them of cash. And I think that, I know that there is legislation that protects the federal government from being hamstrung by unions. I'm not recalling what that is. I know there are protections there. I don't know exactly what they are. But I'm reminded of like Reagan, firing all the air traffic controllers. There has to be
work.
What's that?
And then telling them to get back to work.
Yeah. There's got to be mechanisms that these guys, especially now that you control both houses of Congress, I think there are tons of easy cuts. There are tons of low-hanging fruit, and I think they're going to do great stuff.
Right on, brother. Zach Abraham, Chief Investment Officer, Bulwark Capital. People want to reach out to you. 2025 is coming up. Time to get a second opinion, especially as you move forward. How do they get you?
Yeah, I think the best way to get a hold of us is you go to bulwarkcapitalmanagement.com, knowyourriskradio.com. We do our show every single day, Daily Dots, and we do our 1-hour show every week, which airs on Friday and Saturday. We podcast it out. So go to just Google Know Your Risk Radio or go to bulwarkcapitalmanagement.com. We're not hard to find.
Right on, brother. You go have yourself a good day, and I'll talk to you next week.
All right, man. Good to talk to you as always. Thanks for having me.
Investment advisory services offered through Trek Financial LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. Any references to performance of securities are thought to be materially accurate, and actual performance may differ. Investments involve risk and are not guaranteed. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Trek 24308.